Okay, alright. And I'm just realizing that I didn't update the title. One sec. There we go. There we go. Alright. So, greetings, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome to the stream or the video if you're on YouTube. As you can see over yonder here, we are doing chapters 18 to 21, which, the end of the book, for Robin Wall Kimmerer's Gathering Moss. And yeah. It's one of those that she has a very lyrical writing style, and it's great, and the info and stuff, and all that. She also has a tendency to, like, put some of the more kind of depressing stories towards the end, which I understand from a call to action perspective, like, I get it, but also, so, there's that. Yeah. So, how is everyone doing before we just jump in to the text and analyses and all of that? Overwriting style, but oy vey, the sads, yeah, no, totally. Especially because, like, if it's a sad that, like, oh, okay, well, there's this thing, but we can do this other thing to perhaps mitigate it. But for most of them, it's like there's a sad, and it's kind of unclear how to fix it, or if fixing it is possible. Which is the reality of the situation a lot of times. But also, you know? Yeah. So, yeah. Hopefully, everyone's doing alright. Better than last week, okay. Good to hear. Good to hear. That is most definitely a positive. Glad we made stream. Yes, same. Glad to see you in the chat, friends. Real glad to see you in the chat. Yeah. Oh, yeah, just as a PSA thing, because might as well. One of the things that it spans kind of the duration of the text, right? Is that, well, there's a bunch of different individual species of moss, and they all have their own niches and requirements and everything. A lot of times, if they are taken out of their home environment, they don't do too well. And being that they grow so slowly, generally, right. And being that they grow so slowly, generally, let me express what this though. I try. Not only is trying to grow mosses in a non-native environment a challenge, sometimes it's not even really possible depending on the conditions, and it's a real slow process. So like for wild harvesting, shall we say, that tends to be a pretty big way that moss is acquired for, things like moss packs used for floral arranging. And well, I can see on site that they're all mosses. All the ones that I've seen from the moss collection, and I don't, which makes us respect the swabs of moss in Japanese gardens more. Yeah, totally. All the ones that I've seen from the moss collection, because that's what it's called. That's the thing. Like they might have figured out how to grow it in a sustainable way, but also I know that like all the green in here is dye, so probably not with that. I know that I've seen this type at Joann's, so I don't know. How long does it take for harvested moss to regenerate? I think we saw 6 to 10 years minimum, depending on a harvest method. Yeah. It was 6 to 10 about sounds good for a low range. Because going back like 4 years later, there was basically no regrowth for the accounts in here, and it just grows really slow. So yeah, that sounds about right. And also, I have to wonder about the labeling on this, right? Because it just says chartreuse reindeer moss, which chartreuse would be the color, but I think it's slightly more visible on this side. But like, it looks like there's 3 different types of moss in there. So I don't know. Unless reindeer moss is just like an umbrella category. I don't know. But yeah. Would not suggest getting that sort of thing unless it's from ethically sourced sources. And even then, like, how would you define that? And B, if you do end up getting some, don't put it in a terrarium. Because at that point, the plant brain didn't realize that different types of mosses had different requirements. And there's mosses that, if it dries out, all you have to do is rehydrate it, and it's fine. This is not that. I can say that right now. Like, this stuff over here, not that. So, yeah. It is, however, chock full of chemicals and things. Because it is still really squishy and whatnot. So yeah, that'll be incorporated into some kind of dry art project and then won't be repurchased. But yeah, anyway. Is there an ethical source for the peat moss? Used so much in gardening. That one, I don't know. Because technically, it's a renewable resource, quote unquote, because it grows, but it grows at such a slow rate and kind of depends on the foundation layers to continue growing and stuff. Can you get sphagnum for ethnobotanist experiments that isn't dyed? Probably. Like, if I can find some, I'll try and do that. I don't know where to get moss, especially not like ethically sourced moss. But I know I wanted to do those like enclosed terrariums for a while, and you usually have a couple of different types of mosses in there, but I don't know. We'll see on that. But yeah, some sphagnum might be a possible. Depends on what's available and whatnot. So yeah, that's that one. Yeah, that one's muted. Okay. Yeah. All right. So with the text. Okay, let me see. Can moss be made into fabric or papyrus? Maybe. Okay. Let me know how the mic is. Right now I've got it wrapped around my hand right there, just so that I still have access to my fingers. So let me know if it's going wonky. um, uh, yes. And here we have moss cloth. You know. Ha. Okay. Fabric made with moss, from moss. Wait, what's wrong with moss cloth? Um, in whichever chapter it was that the bystander, it must have been, she was talking about how was essentially moss poachers would go into a forest and just strip moss from the trees. And there are regulations in place to have like a limited number of mosses that can be taken at any particular point. But just like with, whaling or anything else that's a natural resource that is profitable, they don't tend to abide by that all that often. Oh, so that's what it is. Yeah, yeah. So in that particular, it's the moss cloth, as it were, tends to be the less aesthetically pleasing bits of moss that can kind of be globbed together in a conglomerate flat structure sort of thing. And most of the time they put an adhesive back on it, so you can use it as a quote unquote cloth, but it's essentially a moss mat that you can stick to something, which is a lot of times how, like, for like miniatures and stuff, every once in a while there's like a solid roof on something, or there's moss laid down for a foundation or whatnot. It's usually that. Yeah. No. It's moss linen, but that just seems to be the name. We have a Creole version of Cinderella that's called Moss Gown. Oh, nice. Okay. I'm not seeing fabric, but okay. Peat moss yarn. While I was attending the Dyer's Week workshop in Finland, I learned about the use of peat to create new and interesting yarns. So there's a link to peat moss yarn, and peat moss is gathered and carded with wool and spun into yarn that can be woven or knitted into garments. Peat can also be used. Peat can also be made into paper used in felt making with wool. Although the cotton grass or peat plant has white wool-bearing heads, that isn't what is used for the peat yarn. Rather, it's the peat moss on the ground that is found between the soil and the roots of the plant. Before being Aerophorum Veganthum grows, dies, and sinks into the marsh. After many thousands of years, the peat industry has gone into the marsh to dig up the peat moss. From the moss, the fibers that the peat industry doesn't need is made into the yarn. The peat yarn is a byproduct of the peat industry, and then it goes on from there. And then there's fungi dyes. And okay, alright, I'm gonna be alright. And toy knitting patterns. Alright. It's gonna be shared in the thing. Yeah, with wool. Which is an interesting combination, but like kind of fit. Yeah. Alright. It doesn't want me to do the copy and the thing, so fine, I'll just open it and really? Come on. Nope. Stop that. I know this is like riveting right now. One second. Okay. There we go. Alright. So, for anyone in the chat who is not in the Discord, if I can get it to... We are amused by the sounds of the oranges, the tech. I am glad to be entertaining. Okay. So, if I can... Yeah, come on. I want to do the share of the things. So we have the things. Alright. Just making sure. Is the stream actually transmitting to you? Y'all can see me and stuff? I ask because, like, I can see me, in OBS, but then I go to the stream page on Twitch, and it says that it's live, but it's a black screen, so I don't know. That's the link there. Can see. Alright. Apparently my system's just weird. Alright. Sounds good. I thought so, because it still says that we're green and stuff, and there doesn't seem to be any frame droppage or anything. But, like, it's being weird, so, alright. Good to know. That's cool. Alright. I'm just gonna move this over, like, over there, so I don't kick it. Making noises over in the corner there now. Alright. So, anyway. Yeah. So the link for the Peat yarn is now in the chat and in the Discord, and will be linked under the resultant video eventually too. But yeah. And now that I have this open, okay, it looks like that's, yeah. Peat moss's fiber length is about 5 to 20 centimeters. It's fairly soft and can be blended with wool. Because peat has a hollow structure, it is twice as warm as wool. Peat is absorbent, light, and comfortable, and is considered to have antiseptic qualities. Interesting. Very interesting. Oh, yeah. Where's that? YouTube. Thank you, Honeycomb. You're a super awesome mod. There you go. It's twice as warm as wool? Wow. Yeah, yeah. So, like, in theory, that could be good. But again, it depends on sustainability on that one. Because I know, sustainable peat harvesting has been an issue in, like, Ireland and whatnot. Let's just see what the internet says. Yeah, there we go. That's what I figured. Okay. Yeah. So, interesting thing. A bit ago we read In Defense of Plants, and there's a post actually about that from 2015. Wow, I did not realize it had been going on that long. Okay. But yeah, there's a post from the In Defense of Plants blog, talking about how peat, like using peat moss for gardening, is unsustainable. And then right above it, right, like, so if you Google something, it comes out with like commonly asked questions, right? So we've got, is peat moss sustainably harvested? And a post from the About Us section of a peat moss supply company that's like, peat moss is abundant and environmentally sustainable. It grows more than 60 times faster than it's harvested. So like, it's amazing and it's great and it's just fine. You can use it for everything. It's great. And then right under it, is peat farming sustainable? Peat moss is not sustainable. It's not a sustainable option for gardening on any level. Peat is the product of the natural process that bogs go through. Yeah, no. Sphagnum moss, the main species of the bog ecosystem, and other plant materials don't decompose in bogs. So, yeah. Yeah, even ABC News is saying, like, peat moss is unsustainable. Like, which, like, I'm glad that, a major news source is covering that. Kind of surprised, but glad. So, yeah. Um, uh, yeah, seriously, the first two results when typing in sustainable peat moss harvesting are from SunGrow. Tend to believe the Knot Company. Yeah, exactly. So, like, the first response, like, the first result was from the company, and it's like, yeah, it sounds a bit suspicious right there. Like, no, what kind of weird moss are you, what kind of, what kind of weird moss are you growing? So, like, it's growing 60 times faster than it's being harvested. And then they're citing that Canada, because this is a Canadian thing, right? Canada has more than 281 million acres of peatlands. 25% of the world's supply. Like, okay, right? Because I know there's a lot of indigenous communities in Canada. So like, do y'all have access, legal access to any of what you're talking about? And B, you sound real suspicious right now, so I'm inclined to just not believe anything you're saying anyway, so there you go. Cause, yeah. Ah. Mm. No. Because at that point, there's a difference between, like, a small farm or, like, someone in a random dwelling, like, harvesting some peat because there's no wood and that's the only thing that's, really flammable so that people don't die in the middle of winter and stuff. And, like, a big factory company who's mining, essentially, peat. How big is an acre? Because that sounds super fishy too. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Which really. Uh-huh. Nope. 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 Okay. Uh. 1 acre is 43,560 square feet. Yeah, you wanna definite investigate. Well, yes, they help me see. Um, hmm. If you calculate the entire area of a football field, including the end zones, it works out to 57,600 square feet. So, 360 by 160. 1 acre equals 43,560 square feet. So, a football field is about 1.32 acres in size. Yeah. So there is that. Yeah. So going with that, there's what 300 football fields worth of peat in theory in Canada somewhere. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I've seen, um, for like housing and stuff. I think it's usually like a half acre or a quarter acre for most plots. That might be inaccurate though. So. If you don't want to be in the chat, you have the option of leaving. So there you go. Like, I mean, you're coming into the space where it's very obvious what we're talking about. And then get mad. So, I just, like, what? Trollnet has been summoned! Valiant Banhammer. Sacrifice Jesus Lord. Yes. Yes, indeed. Now, here's a question. Do we want to... Do we want to implement a counter for Trollner. Or would that be a little too much? I don't know. I would do it now, but I would have to, like, look up how to implement the counter coding. So there's that. Yeah, yeah. Like, it's kind of interesting idea. Maybe. But also, I don't know. But also. So there's yeah. I don't know. Anyway. The Chaos Brownie tempts us. The gods and the trolls. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So, anyway. That's where that one went. Okay. I had like 3 of these for, marking pages and whatever. And one of them just randomly disappeared because it decided it wanted to live between other pages. So, there we go. Alright. So, for the purposes of the reading and things, we've got one, how many was it? 2, 3, 4 chapters. And a bit of a bibliography for the reading. There we go. It's like the glossary. No, that's not what that is. That's not that. No. Is there? There isn't a glossary. Okay. Oh, we're going back to the text now. Yeah, I mean, I figure we might as well, like, might as well. There's some really interesting titles in here too. Like half of them, it looks like, are textbooks, just from like Prentice Hall and McGraw Hill tend to be textbook producing publishing houses. And Timber Press, that's another one. And the ones that aren't seem to be from either universities or labs and stuff. There's one from the Royal British Columbia Museum, so that's cool. Common Mosses of British Columbia. And all of them are, well, there's some from the 70s and 80s, but most are from, like, the 90s, it looks like. Yeah, most. Fair. Fair. Alright. When you've written enough articles and things that you can fully, like, cite yourself, like, this much of the page is her own stuff that's being cited. Which, alright. Further reading of interesting things. which at least for some of them it looks like it's articles that were written during the research that's being described in the rest of the text. Because there's one in here, where's it? Where'd it go? Wherever it is. There's one, yeah, okay. The role of slugs in dispersal of the asexual propagules of Dicranium flagare, which was one of the things that they were trying to figure out, if slugs were the main propagators of a particular species, and it turned out to be chipmunks. So, like, there you go. Yeah, epic power move. Alright. Well. Very cool. Good to know. Yes. But yeah. So, we've got the first chapter we're doing was The Owner, which, you know, if you're working with whatever, some shady character who's just referred to as the owner, I don't know about that. But, you know, there might be a reason for anonymity, aside from being real shifty, maybe, in theory. I don't know. But, like, I want to be surrounded by nature, and you're being called in as part of a habitat restoration thing. And the nature and habitat restoration involves buying random plots of land that have interesting plants on them, and then digging the plants up and transplanting them around your house. Because reasons? I don't know. I don't know about that. That and just the description of, like, yes, this person's a collector. Yeah, well, his, like, I know that mentality, has been in play for centuries, you know, because that's pretty much what has happened for centuries, of, like, I want this thing, but it's over here, so I'll make an offer or otherwise acquire it. Case in point, the compendiums of artistic and cultural objects on display in the house. Like, it's one thing if it's something that has been inherited and you just happen to be taking care of it, but if you're going out of your way to acquire things, We get the impression that if he could get away with it, the owner would collect people. Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. Totally. Like, in a big way. Yeah. And like, oh yes, I really like the mosses, so I want the mosses. But like, you're not replicating the environment that the moss can live in. So how are you getting it? Oh, you're super gluing it to the rocks. That's great. Huh. But why are they dying? Like, you have them in full sun. What did you expect? Ah. So, yeah. mm. Hmm. Mm. What? And just she's there talking to the on-site horticulturist Matt, and like, I get if he's like, if he needs the job because there's a house payment and there's a kid on the way and everything. But it it's very obvious that he was uncomfortable with being there, with how they were running things, and then from the sounds of it, either the results weren't panning out or whatever, so got fired and moved somewhere else, and they just decided, oh, right, well, the moss is on the rock, so we'll just move the rocks, that's in the mountain. So, like, we'll blast the mountain, it's fine. What do you mean the moss doesn't like it now? Like, it was fine before. Like, really? Really? And then you go from that of, like, bringing in people from other countries to, like, dynamite a mountain in order to get mossy rocks out. And then the mosses that are just kind of chilling between the flagstones out front, like, no, they're in the wrong spot. We need to kill them all. Like, what? What? Like, the one place on your property that the moss has just decided that it wants to be because, it's fine there. But it doesn't conform to the rigid expectations of whatever BS logic is being employed. Really? Just why? Just why? Yeah. Which, I mean, it's a depressing thought to think that that's just kind of a thing that is happening. But she writes it in a very emotive way. I'll say that. Yeah, I made a note at the back here. Like, if the native flora didn't conform to the owner's vision, it was eliminated, but the local mosses that refused to grow on his property thrived in the newly barren landscape. Because there's a bit at the end that she went back because she was asked to consult for something else a year later, and they put Roundup in like a 10-foot swath around the perimeter, and it was just like a blanket of mosses. Like everything else had been killed off, but the mosses were just there, outside the perimeter, just like, alright, you want us here, but like, we're on the other side of the fence, so we're not under your territory, but like, we're here, sort of, but not really. Why didn't you blab about the mosses, Matt? We revoke his right to have one of our favorite guy names. He is not worthy. Yeah, like, it's obvious that whoever's owning this place doesn't spend time there. Yeah, because we're the arbiters of that. Like, hey, totally. It works. It works. It's obvious that the owner doesn't spend time there and is only there for a limited run anyway. And I can see why Matt would have like if you're being tasked with like I need or want X as a display piece, and then you're just walking through a forested area and like, oh, I found a thing. Like, hey, boss, does this sort of lineup work with what you wanted to do? Like, and a reasonable person would be like, oh yeah, something like this with these kind of colors, as close as we can do, in the space that works with the space that is sustainable. But like, no, instead it's just, or that might have been the first round, and but in order to do that, it was like taking moss from the wild and sticking it on rocks with no concept of how mosses worked. Brought in Robin, and apparently the milkshake thing didn't work. So like, oh well, I mean, that's what I want anyway, and it already exists, so like, you're fired, I'm hiring someone else. At which point, like, bruh, your boss is shady, so like, yeah. How about you do the Google and find a reference photograph? Maybe. Just thing. Especially because at that point it sounded like he was kind of iffy about it, but not enough to officially leave. So, might not have fully keyed into how bad it could go. But also, he was harvesting stuff from the wild to use. So, like, I don't know. Well, at that point, he was still on site, but, like, it seemed like his job when Robin was there was in charge of the Moss Project. So it sounds like he was reassigned or fired from the Moss Project because it wasn't producing and got shunted over to something else. So, yeah. Uh, yeah. Yeah, no, he totally should have seen that that's where it would go. But, like, it, it, it's weird. I'm kind of reminded of the whole Evan Summerlin thing of like everyone else is like, dude, this guy, I this right here, this is some shady stuff happening. So, mm. But he's just like, oh yeah, my friend's over here. He's really cool. You'll like him. Like, no. The way he talked about the protected plants made it so blatant they were poached. Yeah, no, totally. Totally. Like, it. Alright, just as a thing, right? If you're going to have plants in the ground, right? Having like a nursery tag in the soil to indicate, like, especially if you're not familiar with particular plant care, having the little cards in the soil to say what the name is and as a reminder when you're going through stuff, like what kind of care the plant needs, like X amount of water, sun requirements, that sort of thing. So, like, if anything changes or as you're doing rounds, you can just check and make sure everything's still alright. Fine. But every plant still had the nursery tags on it. Which just sounds like a weird way to plant things. Just out of the gate. That and Trillium doesn't tend to like to be replanted, just as a thing. But, yeah. Mm, I, I don't know. I don't know about that. There's, there's a lot in there that, I don't know. On a slightly more positive, we've got some, yeah. So we've got what was it? The Minum cuspitatum there. That's one of the little moss friends. And then we've got a shoot of Grimia that's a common rock-dwelling moss right there. There's another one. I thought, where did it go? Oh, I know, Matt took it. Apparently there is not another moth in this one. Alright. Also, dear summer led son, you don't have to be just like your dad, really, we swear. Yeah, no, I haven't started reading Foxmask yet. So, like, hopefully, that's, seriously, like, hopefully, there's enough people in that community who'd be like, dude, no, just stop that. and would be listened to. That, like, seriously. Okay. So the next one we've got in here is the forest gives thanks to the mosses. But it's essentially a sequence of, like, the forest and the trees and everything is in a feedback loop, essentially. And the mosses absorb rainfall, soften the rainfall, so boy. Mosses are very useful, yes. Yes, they are. And softens the rainfall so that the ground cover under the canopy doesn't get pelted with rain all the time, but also that there's kind of a nice constant stream of water going down the trunks, and it essentially washes the trunks and washes any, like, debris or decaying organic matter down to the roots, and thus revitalizes the soil composition, because there's, like, a natural refertilization process happening. In contrast, you have areas of clear cut or mostly clear cut forests that it's just open, baking soil and nothing much to shade everything. Yeah, the nitrogen cycle, exactly. And, well, there's some attempt made to help the plants to provide a bit of reseeding possibility for the trees. The example given in here is that in amongst the clear cut, there's like one random tree that was left, and it's a good tree to have left because it's one of the older ones that's really well established, that has mosses in the branches and everything. But because the entire coppicing seems to have been more environmentally friendly practice, I mean, Yeah, really. Yeah. It depends on where you are and what type of trees you're working with. But, yeah. Because then it's essentially pruning. It's not mass deforestation. But yeah. You end up with some interesting tree shapes, though. I will say that. But yeah, no. Coppicing, especially compared to what we've got now, coppicing sounds like it would be a lot more sustainable than that. Yeah. So, uh, yeah. And the observation is made that while the tree itself is fine, the canopy doesn't extend shade far enough to shade the mosses on the tree, so they've all dried out and died. And there are some mosses, like previously stated, that can totally come back to life and are just hibernating when it's dry. These are not those. And you have a reciprocal relationship situation happening in a forested environment like that, where trees provide shade, but for other trees. So the mosses of one tree are shaded by the canopy of another tree, especially when they get to be that sizable. So in just doing a full clear cut, you remove any possibility of that. And like, even if it was, no, selective logging, right? Where there was like just a selection of trees taken. Like that would it would still have some issues just because, but it would be a lot better. And I know there's places that do that. And it opens the ground floor for other plant life. But coppicing was more like thinning and planting replacements. Okay. Admittedly, it's been a bit since I looked it up. So, that whole thing might have been completely inaccurate. I don't know. We'll see. Coppicing is a traditional method of woodland management which exploits the capacity of many species of trees to put out new shoots from their stump or roots if cut down. In a coppiced wood, which is called a coppice, young tree stems are repeatedly cut down near to near ground level, resulting in a stool. Yeah. So that's the kind of growing setup that we've got. And so yeah, it it depends on what you need it to do, but like that's a colorized version. It might be a little bit easier to see. So it depends on the kinds of plants involved. But yeah. Fantasy novels of this lettuce once again. Yeah, no, like, you can, yeah. I don't know how prevalent it is in other regions, but I know in England, you can tell kind of right off if the forest has been coppiced because it looks real weird. Not that we looked it up instead of figuring it out from context, so maybe it's not the novel's fault. I mean, like, it depends. Because sometimes the writer will just assume that you know what it is, and sometimes it'll be visually described. So, it depends. It depends. I don't know. Yeah. Is what it is. Yeah. So, there's that. And we've got Nicara panada. It's an epiphytic moss. Right there. Little moss friend. And then that's not a page. Okay. Want a visual of these weird woods now? Let's put in Discord. Time for bed. Okay. Yeah, no worries. I will put if I can find something. Because like I'm pretty sure just, pictures from Sherwood. Like I'm pretty sure Sherwood is one of the ones that's been heavily coppiced. That may or may not be accurate. So we'll see if I can find some photographs for that. Good night, honeycomb. Have a good sleep. Alright, so there we go. Alright, so on that, so we've got a frond of hypnum eponins that's common on mossy logs. Wait, where are you? There you are. Like so. And there's a note in here that slugs both eat and disperse mosses, which is cool. And then we've got a quote at the end of the chapter here. Human designed systems are a far cry from this ongoing creation of ecosystem health, taking without giving back. Clear cuts may meet the short-term desires of one species, but at the sacrifice of the equally legitimate needs of mosses and merlets, salmon and spruce. I hold tight to the vision that someday soon we will find the courage of self-restraint, the humility to live like mosses. On that day, when we rise to give thanks to the forest, we may hear the echo in return, the forest giving thanks to the people. So, there we go. And then we've got the bystander, which this is where we get discussions of poachers essentially taking mosses from the natural environment and selling them as packaged moss things. And well, moss is technically a natural resource, a renewable, quote-unquote, resource. It grows so slowly that harvesting it for commercial purposes really isn't sustainable, especially because it tends to, need very particular environmental conditions. And a lot of times, very particular environmental conditions, including having particular insects and other, microorganisms living in the same environment. On top of which, according to the research and stuff, the mosses can't grow on an established tree. It's just there's a few spores that get a foothold in leaf scars. So a leaf was present, leaf fell off, and slightly around that and around buds and things. And by the time the tree is well established, the moss is also well established. But you get things like mosses being harvested and dried and whatever, and labeled as Oregon green forest moss, and sold to florists and production companies and whatever else. If you want a lifelike look or a natural look, which let's see what kind of buzzwords we've got here. You can use it. Oh yeah, okay, here. You can use the moss with dried and silk flowers, or as a soil cover in your garden, or a lining for your wire hanging baskets. Yeah, no, you can't. You just no. Do not put this in any capacity where there's going to be growing things, because it will leak, die everywhere. Add natural texture and style to your orchids, topiaries, and wreaths. Even your terrarium, yeah, no. Our lush, pliable mosses even work well alone. Simply fill a clear glass vase or bowl with your choice of moss for a fresh, green, eco-friendly look. Yeah, it's an eco-friendly look. It's not eco-friendly, so keep that in mind. There are ways to potentially have like a moss feature in something, especially if you're only like sourcing a small amount of it and it's from a ethically sourced source. But that's a whole kind of gray area that like I need to do more research in before I say, yes, that is a viable thing. So there we go. But yeah, just be aware of that. And then we've got but yeah, basically anywhere that has like a rough patch on branches might be able to sustain moss spores. But yeah, short of like taking a sandpaper to a living branch, which yeah, not suggested really. You might have some issues there. So the next one we've got is straw into gold. And the main subject for this is the Shistega Panada, or Goblin's Gold, which is this little buddy right there. Or is there another picture? Or alternatively, is that. Where it lives in a fairly damp, dark environment most of the time, but it's situated in such a way that when light gets into the cave or other like rock outcrop that it happens to be in, it tends to grow best in an area that is just like a short burst of light, like you would see in like Neolithic tombs, especially if it's oriented to like the solstices or equinoxes. Yeah. And if there's some deviation in that, because the sun sets before or after it's able to get to where the plant is, or any number of other things, if there's environmental issues that happen, then that could be a thing. Or if the entrance to the structure is compromised, that would negatively impact moss. But it's essentially a series of filaments that extend over the rocky surface and reflect, like, once the light hits, they reflect the light towards, like, the main chloroplast center, and are thus able to photosynthesize. But that's the only exposure to light that they really get. So, and then it depends on how the winds are blowing as to whether or not the spores are distributed. Most seem to stay in little colonies, but yeah, so, so yeah, the main call to action for this seems to be, like, I mean, the big respect the environment. But also, in respecting the environment, take account of where your place in the environment is, and actually listen to what is present, and like take stock of the wild places around you and how you're interacting with everything. So yeah, it's a really good one though. Not sure about a star rating at the moment, but definitely would recommend on that. This one and Braiding Sweetgrass. So yeah, very cool. Anyway, that is it for the mosses. For next week, we've got Orwell's Roses. So let me see. It's like, I would pull it up on the computer, but like that's not gonna happen. Okay. Orwell's Roses by Rebecca Solnit. Why is there no description? that I can look at so I can read it. Oh. Alright. Okay. Try this again. There we go. Orwell's Roses is a book of biography and literary criticism by Rebecca Solnit on the relation between George Orwell's interest in gardening and his other authorial and political commitments. And I remember reading that. Oh, wow. That's a recent one. October 2021. Okay. Alright. So, I remember reading that she wrote it in response to, or after finding roses that Orwell had planted when he was alive. So, yeah. Looking forward to that one. Yeah. Because as much as I genuinely love fiction, there's times that, you just need some good old non-fiction in there too. But yeah, anyway. So that is it for today. We're doing chapters 1 and 2 of Orwell's Roses for next week. And yeah, we'll see you all later. Thank you so much for hanging out and participating in the shenanigans and discussions and everything. And with that, we shall end the stream. Now, is there anyone Alright. Yeah, let's go pop over to Diatoms. Because they're pretty cool and we haven't rated them in ages. Like literal ages. So yeah. If you're not familiar, for anyone hanging out still, Diatom's attack usually has There we go. Diatom's attack generally has like microscopic sort of things. Really?
A little too much. Yeah, just because it's fun to use. But for Diatom, sometimes it gets rid of the holes. It's like, oh, this is noise? It's not noise. What's the Diatom? I was trying to keep that part. So I have to fight.
There we go. Okay. So we've got. Yeah. Yeah, looks like they're.
What I want is something to. Hey, Mania. Thank you for the subscription.
Why?
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you for the subscription.
Come on.
Also,
Okay, so that's the raid messages. If everyone could pick whichever one applies. And come on.
I'll start off
Come on.
looking at all the colors. I usually end up going with blue or purple. I don't know why. Those tend to be the colors that I sort of tend to navigate towards more frequently. But this has sort of new appearance. It translates well online.
Okay. There we go.
Something like this.
There we go. Alright. Once again, thank you for hanging out. Have a fabulous rest of your day, and I will see you all later. Bye, everybody.
Sometimes I actually go in and look at the actual color. Just distance between. Hey, adventuring, how's it going?